You want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
Hello, today's guest has 2 national championships. I'm trying to tease this out a little bit here. What else? Control Their Own Destiny in B Street here in 2018 with a first place and a second place at 2 different Pro Solos. Actually, 2 second places as I just did a little more homework here after the show. And we really limited the Civic talk. Even more so the Mazda talk. Evidently, Miatas are not her favorite. Yet I tried to egg her on there. She happens to have put, what was it, like over 12,000 miles, 16,000 miles on a motorcycle in one summer. And of course she takes it to the track. She's fast. She's known as Rachel Baker. As she says at some point, people put together that Rachel Baker with the very cool hats and dresses also is Rachel Baker who drives the Porsche Cayman. So I've seen her a couple times around the country this year because she made at least 3 pros. I think I was at 2 of the 3. Actually, I was at 3 pros she was at this year. So lots of fun out there seeing her compete. And you will hear all kinds of things from the mental side of what she's doing to improve that. And some of these things will surprise you as to things you can do. Who knew dancing would be one of those? So this was really fun. All kinds of little tidbits here and there that I think hopefully people are going to hear in a different way because they stood out to me. And I tried to actually reiterate that a few times there during the interview you'll hear. So let us know your thoughts and enjoy. Rachel Baker, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting. So tell us, where are you at right now? Where do you live? Where do you race?
I'm in Massachusetts. I'm in the New England region. I actually live 2 miles from our local autocross site.
It's a rough life, isn't it? That commute, you can't even fit a podcast in.
Yeah, no, my car's not even warmed up by the time I get there.
2 minutes. And how many local events do they have a year?
Yeah, it's 2 miles, but so Devens hosts autocrosses every weekend from the beginning of April until the end of October. So there's about 7 different clubs that run there. And so every weekend day, there is a club running an event. So you could literally autocross every weekend day in the summer if you wanted to.
Wow. So how often do you make it out there? Because I know you travel quite a bit. And for me, I miss quite a few locals because I'm traveling doing Pro Solos or something else. What are you doing local-wise?
Oh, I don't know. I don't count because then it would be scary. Basically, usually once a month, there's one day on a weekend where I'm not autocrossing either nationally or locally. I race with 5 of the 7 clubs, so I'm there really, really frequently.
All right, let's do some math here. There's 4 weekends usually at least, minimum, I guess, in a month. And if there are, that's 8 days and you miss a day a month. You take a day off.
Usually it's like one of the clubs that I don't race with. And then there's like the travel national events. So I'll miss, some of my clubs overlap with those. So, but yeah, I definitely do more than 30 events a year at least. So.
Well, it sounds like you almost do that many a month. Okay, every 2 months probably, if I did the math correctly, almost there. So when did you get started? When did this autocross thing become something that you knew about and started doing?
So I bought my BMW 135 in 2008, and at the end of the year, one of the local guys who runs the BMW club, he had a 1 Series as well, and he told all of us on the forum to come out and give it a try. And so I did a novice school at the end of 2008, and then it was winter here in New England. So then I tried an ice racing event that the club also put on, which was terrifying because it had rained the night before, and it was sheer ice. So literally it was like me sliding around on snow tires, not really racing, just kind of like sort of driving around this ice path on the lake. But then the following year, in 2009, I did a couple more BMW events. And, I didn't really start autocrossing a lot until 2012 because I also bought a Suzuki GSX-R 600 in 2009, and I put nearly 16,000 miles on it that summer, and I spent a lot of time doing that.
16,000 miles in 1 year?
Yeah, in one summer. I just rode everywhere.
No track time, just driving around, just riding to ride?
I did a couple track days, but
Of course.
there's a lot of fun roads out around New England. So I would do day trips with a couple people, and you'd spend 8 hours riding around, on a weekend day, and you can put a lot of miles on a motorcycle that day.
So, and you actually took it to the track. So now we're going to kind of get into this competitiveness. What did you do before you discovered cars and motorcycles? Were you competing at anything?
Let's see. I guess in high school I played musical instruments. I'm a flautist and an oboist, and so I did have to audition for things with that. In high school, I was one of the top flute and piccolo players in the state of New Hampshire, so I guess I just like to be good at things.
Very, very interesting. So you weren't top in one, you were top in two. How much?
Piccolo is similar to a flute, but I also there's not very many oboe players in the world, and so I was in a couple youth orchestras on the oboe. So the flute's a lot more competitive.
But how much practice time were you putting in then?
At least an hour a day of playing, and then there was days when you'd be getting ready for an audition or a competition, and then you'd ramp up and play a couple hours. But then I also gave flute lessons, and I had, like I said, the youth orchestras. So I was doing a lot of playing back in the day.
No, something probably never have come up on a podcast, and probably will with no one else. So I played clarinet. Why? Because percussion, I think, was number one, and that clarinet thing looked really cool in 7th grade or 6th grade. So I said, that can be number 2 choice. Of course, for sure, I get to hit the drums, right? Well, I'm maybe one of the only people in the world that went from first chair to last chair. And this is probably hopefully something I will overcome competitiveness-wise. Since I didn't really practice much, once Karen played, I knew I was done. I didn't even try to compete, which is really weird. I didn't even go make a run because I knew I was done for. So I did play the clarinet. I was okay at it at times, but I never put in the practice. And I want to come back to the practice in autocross, I think, is huge. We call it seat time. There's a lot of things going on there. So you've already been somewhat dedicated, let's say competitive, a lot of things wrapped in there. You understood what it took to be good. And I don't know how that morphed into autocross here. What year did you say that was? 2009 you kind of got really going in? Or was it 2012 that you really got more committed to it? So let's go back. So you had the motorcycle. That was 16,000 miles. You're driving around a lot. Take me to the track time. You took this bike out to a track and did what?
Yeah, so I've done a couple track days on the motorcycle. It wasn't racing. It's literally just track days. So, you remove the mirrors and you tape up all the plasticky bits and you get the bike ready. And then you wear all the silly leather gear and they put you in different groups. And so then you go out on the track. And since it's so much better than car track days because you don't have to wait for .5s. And basically, if you can pass somebody on the outside, you can pass them. There's no restrictions, really, like with car track days. So it's really a lot of fun. You just kind of, you push yourself. And there's no instructor with you, obviously. But every once in a while, there'll be an instructor ahead of you, and they wear fun vests. And they kind of, just have you follow them and kind of chase them. And so you kind of just push your comfort level, which is really great, I think, 'cause that really helps me be braver, I think, is just, I'm so used to trying to push myself around corners and leaning off the bike, and you have to be slightly uncomfortable.
Well, not that I understand personality types all that well. You're brave enough to actually take your bike to the track. That right there says something like you're like, hey, this is worth the risk for the reward.
Well, you think it's got to be safer than doing it on the street, right?
That's what I told my friend years ago. Like, you got to get a bike. I looked at the bike. I walked over to the safety section. He goes, you wouldn't buy all that. I'm like, yes, I would, because I guarantee I'll end up at the track. It just looks like leaning the bike over and sticking your knee out just looks like crazy fun. And
it is so much fun. And I mean, I've low-sided it before on the track, so I've definitely crashed. But you kind of just pop back up, hopefully, and you keep going.
I think it's the book that someone recommended. Actually, I see right there, A Twist of the Wrist. And I'm pretty sure in reading that book for autocross, they talk about when you slide off, whatever you just called that, and you're sliding, they say count to like 4 or 5 before trying to stand up. Because they said you're going so fast usually that it takes a long time. You think you're stopped and you're not. And they said you'll stand up and fall back over.
Yeah, a lot of people then you stumble over and fall even more. Yeah, it feels like you're going slow, but I kind of low-sided into a gravel trap, so it wasn't so bad.
Probably not so smooth either, or pebbles actually are good gravel rolls.
Yeah, they definitely slow you down a bit quicker than if you just like low side into the grass or anything. And a low side is way nicer than a high side. So.
Oh yeah, kind of. I think of snowboarding. If you get flipped over the wrong direction, you hit really hard. It's kind of like I'm not sure what it's.
Yeah, you get thrown up in the air if you high side. So the low side is the way to do it if you're going to crash.
So you want to lean over as much as you can because it's safer.
Or you're just silly. You really just don't want to crash, but you know.
So do you still have the bike or a bike?
I actually have a Ducati now, yeah.
And you still put decent miles on it and get to the track every so often?
I don't put as many miles on it now because I spend too much time at autocross. But I take it out, and at least once or twice a year I go for a long 3-day weekend with a couple of friends, and we make a weekend trip out of it. And I also have a Vespa, so I commute mostly on that.
Very cool. Very cool. So you get hot and heavy into this autocross. Are you mostly staying local that first year you're doing lots of it, or do you very quickly find out about tours and pro solos? And
No, so in 2011, I joined I was only doing BMW club up to that point, and then I joined another club. I can't remember which one it was. So I was doing, more than, I was doing maybe 10 events a year at that point. And then in 2012, one of the local guys, Cheng, had a D stock Integra Type R, and he let me drive with him at an SCCA event. So then I tried out the SCCA event, the local SCCA event. And then later that year, Matt Murray invited me to drive his 1M at Nationals in 2012, I think, or was it 13? Years are confused. I think it was 2013. Yeah, because that was my first year. So, but he had let me drive that because he had previously tried out my BMW 1 Series when he was going to drive with the Strelnick. So it was kind of like a return favor. So these people invited me to SCCA events, and then I tried that. And so my first national event was 2013 Nationals in the 1M and A stock.
Nice. But really the important thing everybody should make note is she first did SCCA in a Type R Integra. That's near and dear to my heart. I'm joking about that, but since I drove it for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I actually drove mine this past weekend. I went ahead and told Salil really quickly. I said I actually drove the car. I drove it all around Denver. I actually stopped at a Porsche dealership with a Type R Integra. No credit for doing that, right? Ricer car versus Porsche, but I said I'm going to take the car out. So 2013 Nationals. Did any of these cars really push your buttons and say, I want to stick with one, or we're still going to lead up to 2014 that you're going to be back in front-wheel drive? What was going through your mind then? Were you just trying out different cars locally or racing your own only? Or?
Yeah, so locally I was racing my 1 Series, but it was way under-prepped for what I was running it in. Because initially it just had a tune, because that's what we do with our little turbo cars. We make them fast in a straight line. So I was running ASP locally with just a tune. And then eventually I put in some camber plates and an OS Geiken diff. And then I was still running stock shocks and no sway bars. And so I was running STU because I got rid of the tune. And then, so I was still just running all that locally. And then nationally, like I said, I only did 1 event in 2013. And then 2014, that's when I'll just really drive what other people will offer me at that point. And so 2014, I did the DC Pro Solo with Matt Murray in the 1M. So that was my first pro, which was so much fun. And then he couldn't make the next event, which was Toledo. And so Tony Savini and Jeff Jacobs, even though they had just met me, Matt Murray gave him a good enough reference that they let me drive their A-Stock Corvette at Toledo. And then, and so then at Nationals, I had driven the 1M and then the A-Stock Corvette, and then the Keels offered me their SMF CRX. And so I drove that at Nationals. I just really drove whatever, and I loved the SMF CRX. It was so much fun.
So take us back to, did you change or have to think of anything differently going from front-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive?
I don't think a lot about driving. I just kind of do it, which is probably a bad answer. But
I like that. The
CRX I loved because it's so rotatey, and that really just appeals to me. Like, I just really like the way a car moves around, and so I just feel what the car does, and I just kind of adapt to it. But yeah, the CRX was just so much fun because it was so much all at once. It was more just reactionary to what the car is doing because everything happened so quickly.
True. Yeah, I've not driven many of them, but I realized with that extra power, like an STS Civic, basically you get up to 200 horsepower and it's very quick. Driving an EP Civic, I guess, is my more recent experience in something like that. It's like, oh my goodness, just go, go, go. So you jump back in the front wheel drive. You get a championship in 2014 in that car. How many times have you driven it before then?
I had driven it at a local event. I think it was either my second or third time in the car when I went to Nationals. Okay.
So you had a little bit of seat time. And how many other front wheel drive cars had you driven? It sounds like very few.
Yeah, I mean, the Type R I drove for like 2 events, and then the engine blew. And then I drove an STS Civic, I think twice. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, it doesn't feel terribly.
And when's the last time you hopped in a front wheel drive car?
Oh, the last time. I've been with my Porsche for a while. Oh gosh. I mean, at novice schools, I'll help people out, and I'll occasionally hop into a Mini or something, but okay. I can't, if I have seriously driven a front-wheel drive car lately, I don't think so.
Okay, no, it's just, most people say once you get into rear-wheel drive, they can no longer drive front-wheel drive, or it seems weird. And what's amazing with you is you just hop in, you went back and forth, and it sounds like no detriment, no ill will, saying I can't do that or that sucks. So that's neat. That's neat.
No, the SMF car was still one of my most favorite cars to drive.
Yeah, and actually all this reminds me of Sam Strano and Shelley Montfort telling me that the GT3 was supposed to drive like a Civic, as in lift, rotate, add gas, plant it, and go. So that's
what I say about my Porsche too. I'm like, I want the lift rotation because the mid-engine, the Porsche has like no front camber, so the only way to really get it to turn is to get rotation. So you basically lift, and the engine kind of like starts to rotate you around, and then you gas back out.
Don't say that. That's putting bad thoughts in my head. I just talked to.
Oh, you should totally buy a Porsche.
No, I went to a dealership. We'll see if I could dare pull that off. But it's funny. I was talking to Doug Willey, who was on the Houston podcast group. He wanted to chat about SSC and some other things, and somehow we got to your class and your car. Because especially for track stuff, I'm like, I think they'd be a lot more fun than an SSC car. It's like, these things are kind of gutless. I said, for me, it's my Miata training. I'm back in a slower car. It's momentum. I'm trying to not use the brake pedal a lot. So coming back to your car, and what year specifically is yours?
I have a 2008 Porsche Cayman S.
Yeah, I was like, I think that would be a lot of fun. And he actually goes, I think I have access to one. So I was like, that just seems like a lot of fun. They've got some power. And in the back of my mind, I love the fact that if they can rotate on lifting, that's still ingrained in me. If that can happen, that's beautiful.
Yeah, there are some downsides to that year. So that model year is 2006 to 2008. Like I said, they don't get much front camber. Usually -1 is the max you can get on front camber, and they have an open diff. So that is the big downside. But, I mean, they're at least not classed against the Z06s anymore, so it's a trade-off.
That's what I remember. I think I spoke with you years ago, and I was like, what, this is open diff? I'm like, how in the heck are you competing against these cars? This doesn't make any sense. And I think you're like, yeah, it's not so fair.
Yeah, maybe that was when it was still in A Street. Because I drove it for a year in A Street while trying to get it reclassed. Yeah.
That's where I could just tell, and that's what I think shows to why you're fast. I was like, somebody out there is very aggressive in that car. They're really working it. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know who you were or anything else, but I was like, oh, all right, I got to at least come up and say something like, that looked good out there. You were driving it hard. And this is leading toward, when you first started, were you always aggressive? Let's say, I'm putting this aggressive term on you, that you would get to the limit. Is that something you would say came natural to you with cars, motorcycles, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. I'm generally not afraid of things. So, I mean, especially cars, like with a motorcycle, if something bad happens, you fall off and you crash. But in a car, well, I'm still in the car. It's not going to fall over, so I'm not terribly worried about pushing the car.
And if it falls over, you have a helmet on, right? I mean, we're all safe here.
Yeah, you got that really safe autocross helmet.
Although, and maybe I said this before, my head has hit the side of the Integra really hard. The S2000 really hard at times. Now, some people that aren't quite as tall probably don't get that, but I used to think
being
this.
5'2", I have not that problem at all.
I used to think it's so silly. I'm like, whoa, that might have really hurt my head if I didn't have a helmet on. So, in case you're out there fooling around, like sometimes we do without a helmet, I'm reminding myself now, keep the dang helmet on. So that's interesting. I hope people realize that they take that and say, especially after doing school, some people are not aggressive. They don't get to the limit. And I've always thought there's not much repercussion to that. Unless there's curbs around or something not safe, the cars spin is basically what happens, and that usually doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah, I guess that's true, because I guess I'm lucky that Devens doesn't have anything to hit. Like, it's just an old Army airfield, so there's no light poles, there's nothing in the grass, really, so...
Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, that's another thing for people to think is, unless there's curbs and such, like one time I remember going backwards really fast in the Integra, I'm like, where is that curb at? And I realized very quickly the car was not slowing down very well going backwards with the brakes on. I didn't hit anything, but it came to my mind, and like, we're still going backwards. But if it's a flat area, like when we race at the airport area over here, there's nothing, it just goes off into grass. That's as safe as you can be to try to spin. And to really, I guess, if you're not getting to the limit, to find out what happens, especially front wheel drive, I feel like a well set up car, you're going to spin it at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you want to try different things. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think I've ever had a problem being somewhat aggressive.
Yeah, no, and I just feel like enough people don't get to that level. If they're not very fast at all, it's because they're not getting to it. A few people go over it all the time, and they need to learn that you have to slow down to go fast, or slow down to turn the wheel. Like, you have to slow down to turn, usually. It just usually happens. So, no, I'm glad I hammered home that point very well there, that being aggressive is great. It's good. Especially if you have insurance, right? You have insurance, covers it all. So, you're competitive in a sense at some point here that you're having fun at these events, or were you competitive the whole time, or I'm putting words in here that aren't applying, or are you just having fun? What's going through your mind as you're not really doing lots of tours yet and such?
I don't think I was competitive locally because I didn't have my car prepped for the class, so I feel like everybody thought I was slow, which is fine, you know. And I even jokingly used, I had a helmet that I painted a couple years ago that was like a turtle because I feel like everybody thought I was slow. And it just so happened that when people were nice enough to let me into their cars that were actually prepped, that it turned out that I wasn't terrible. So that was good. Yeah.
And then at that point, did you think, hey, I'm doing all I can do? Because most people come in, and like you did, you're in the wrong class because you have a tune, you have nothing else. Tires are really important. Most of them have the right tires. And you're just not competitive, and you don't know why. Like, I remember that. 10 seconds of me ought to beat me by. And I'm like, I thought I was pretty good at driving a car. And so until you get into a competitive car, I think there's so many people out there that they're probably pretty decent. They're probably in the top third or quarter locally, but they don't know it because they're in the wrong car for the class.
It actually made me want to try harder because I was like, well, I don't want to make car excuses. So I'm like, well, why don't I just get better? And then, you know, so I just tried to get myself better regardless of my car being not prepped.
There was a challenge or something. It was a challenge to get better?
Yeah, I just thought well, I'll just get better because obviously it can't be all the car. So I knew that I had to get better. And so I just tried to get better while keeping the same car.
All right, exactly. So I have this feeling you think you can be as good as anybody else. How would you phrase that? Like, you knew that you could get better and no car excuse.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Stop using excuses and just be better because none of us are the best that we're ever going to be. So just always try to get better. I
hope some of the people that are really fast are the best. Like, that way we can catch them. You know, I get what you're saying. That's where how I phrased that was, we've got a steering wheel, a gas pedal, and a brake pedal. And somebody just beat me by 10 seconds. That right there hooked me. I'm like, I've got to be able to figure this out. And I think some of us are ingrained with this belief that if they did it, I should be able to do it. And I feel like that was you going, well, even though I have the no car excuse, I should be able to do this and get better and faster. And maybe it's that what you just said, you're not even at your best and you may never get there. You're just always progressing and trying and working to get better. Mm-hmm. That is great. This is now a self-help episode brought to you by Rachel Baker. Get your no.
I have... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I feel like I told you, I just kind of drive. It just kind of happens. But, my biggest autocross problem is all mental. It's just so much mental. That's generally what I'm always working on. So.
Okay. No, I love that part because I feel like that's the final frontier for anyone once if you're in the top echelon, if you're up there competing for wins, I think it comes down to that. And I'm wondering what approach you're taking from that. Have you drawn anything from playing instruments? What are you doing with that? Like, what is your goals? What are your thoughts? Are you reading things, et cetera?
Yeah, so I think a lot of things that aren't driving can also help you get better mentally at driving. So when I was playing the flute, I had major performance anxiety. Like, I hated auditioning. I hated playing in front of people. I would get so sweaty and nervous. So it took a long time to even just be, not to shake when playing in front of people. And that's just, doing it over and over again. And then lately, what I've been trying to do is find ways to build confidence in stage presence, because I feel like if I can calm myself and just be comfortable with what I'm doing, knowing I'm doing my best, it'll be better. So I've started recently taking burlesque dance lessons, and that's, helping me build just personal confidence so that, mentally I'm not psyched out by other people worrying if they're judging me or if they're looking at me or anything like that. So there's like a lot of different things. And then I've taken up running so that I can physically be, able, because there are long days out there at autocross and people just get tired and worn out. And that's also part of, driving well, I think, is being physically, strong and able to handle a whole day of standing outside in the sun. So I find that lots of hobbies can really just help you build on driving well.
No, I like that. I hope I better come back. But I've got to put in there, and her X factor is the hat to keep the sun off. That's what you didn't tell people. And I know that you did some research. So, no, I'm kidding. We're going to get photos. You're going to let me post photos, hopefully, and the hats. I mean, everyone will know exactly who you are. Like, oh, great hats.
Oh.
So, no.
Yeah, people don't usually put me together. They're like, oh, you're Rachel. So Rachel, the person with the hat, is the same as Rachel, the person, the driver. They usually don't connect the two.
The hat is not aggressive. The hat is not fast looking. The hat looks like it might be a little slow. Yes. Okay. So circling back, the name of this book's escaping me. The movie, about the chess guy or youngster who was a chess master, was supposed to be the best ever. The book made about him, or written about him, that became the movie. He mentions in the book how to handle the pressure of chess and everything else. He went down to where athletes trained, and you saying running brought this up. And they go down there and they get your heart rate up. So you sprint, and then how quickly can your heart rate come down? Sprint again, get it up, let it come down. So that's something, interval training, I was doing quite a bit of last year, and still I prefer that to just running forever and ever. So that's something out there I've tried on the mental side, is how quickly can I calm back down? And let's say, especially at a pro solo, you finish a run, if you're shaky at all of anything, it's a pro solo for me, a run. And then I've got to reset and be calm and make sure I can focus for the next 40 seconds or whatever. So that's one thing I'm trying to do, because I believe, like you said, you have to be mentally ready to do what we're going to do for the focus of that.
Yeah.
So the dance lessons, I took them recently, but I wasn't thinking about the benefit to racing, so I might get back on that with the wife and say, we should do dance lessons again. That's, now I know.
You should.
More dance. It makes her happy.
And then you could even win the talent show. You could, take your wife to the talent show and win a set of tires.
No, because you're going to be playing there. You're going to start playing their national anthem now and talent show. You're going to show off.
Oh, I won the talent show last year. I'm done playing the flute at the talent show.
Oh, okay. I missed. Is there a video?
I think Grassroots Motorsports has it. I did an Inspector Gadget remix when I did a flute playing with some beatboxing mixed in.
Oh, nice. I'm sad I missed it. I was probably preparing for the next day. That has to be the reason why I missed it.
I think most people were walking the course, so it's perfectly okay with me.
And that's where also the fluids, I remember one thing John Ames said, he goes, you have to have electrolytes. Like, you need to remember to drink things that will give your body electrolytes so your brain will still function. Because just a day of autocross is one thing. If you're at Nationals and you're there for 9 days from the Pro Solo to the Thursday, Friday runs, I've had to realize I just can't go to the site every day. I have to go chill or do something. Sometimes I drive back home. Anything so that I can mentally be somewhat ready, because I've been spent at times. You're like, oh, it's time to race. I'm supposed to focus and actually care, and I've just been baked in the sun. So I think that's huge to give yourself a chance.
Yeah, I know everybody jokes that it's 3 minutes of racing, but it really is so much on your body. It's so taxing.
Oh, yeah. It adds up big time. And I should let all the books sit here that I'm reading because it's one of this book written in the 1950s. They tell the same thing in some of the races where if you can't walk the course more than once or twice, and these are longer courses, don't walk it at all. And I want to circle this back to you were saying you just go out there and drive. Mm-hmm. I think it's so crazy for me. Like at times, the Texas Pro Solo, my fastest runs were on the first four.
Yeah, that was a lot of people, mine too.
Yeah, and I know that surface is weird. I've heard sometimes people don't improve. But it's so crazy to me that sometimes if I don't walk a course or I go to nationals, my first run is fastest. And so I think for each of us, we need to find out what our strengths are and figure out how to build on those. Now, can we improve on some weaknesses? Maybe we have to compete nationally. But it's really how do you function and how do you get yourself in that best mode, mental, physical, et cetera, so that you can compete and go.
Yes.
And you're running now. So see everybody go start taking dance lessons and running. I don't know if they're going to start playing the flute yet. You're going to have to tell us more on the flute. Maybe we'll get back to, as I told you when we were in Texas, I got to get my clarinet. I'm looking for it fixed. But yeah, right. So you also mentioned coaching. So you first started off in a school, like you took a school, which is seat time I think is great. You make lots of runs seat time wise, locally as well as traveling. How much coaching are you finding time for?
You mean having myself coach or coaching others?
Oh, both. I want to hear if you do both.
Oh, well, I took the EVO schools a while ago because the BMW Club helped host them here locally. So I took all of those at one point. And then I've had, occasionally we have a lot of great people in my area, fortunately. So a lot of times I can just ask people to hop in my car and drive with me. When I was getting my car, trying to get the car reclassed from A Street into B Street, that year I had Mark Daddio, who's local. He drove with me at an event. And then Matthew Braun, I had him drive with me at a national event. So it's I really like having people in the car who are, can really push me or be better than me, and then I can learn from them. And then I do a lot of instructing locally. So I'm the novice chief for our local SCCA region, and we just had an event this past weekend where I had 30 novices. So I don't have to instruct them all, but, I kind of wrangle them and greet them all and hope they get through their day and check in on them throughout the day periodically, and I'll do some instructing there. In the BMW Club, I'm the registrar, so I meet everybody there. Luckily, I'm pretty good with names. And then the local Porsche clubs I instruct, and the local Renegade Miata Club I instruct. So.
And coming back to having these co-drivers, especially Mark Daddio and Matthew Braun, you're learning from them. So are you getting to ride with them at I think you said some of the nationals. Are you collecting data, video? How are you learning?
Yeah, so with Mark, he did a local event with me, so I got to ride with him and have him ride with me for that day. And then Matthew, I obviously couldn't ride with him at the national event, but we took video. And, that one was a terrible event, but he did a really great job, so I learned a lot. And then he actually came and flew out to my region to help me drive my car again, so that time I did get to ride with him and see what he does. He's pretty crazy. But
well, what year was this?
2000, at the end of 2015, maybe?
Okay. No, I rode with him probably in 2016. So yeah, it is very hard to explain to anybody that hasn't ridden with him how he can drive a car and how aggressive he can be to get it to rotate in the middle of a slalom by hitting the gas pedal and the brake and then the gas or whatever. There's a whole podcast right there, especially since he hasn't been on the show yet. Oh,
he's so wonderful. But the thing is, what's great about him is last year he's like, I'm going to change my driving style completely. Yep. So he's trying to relearn a different way to drive because he's always competing with so many talented people in his class that he's like, no, I need to do this to get better. And so it's great that even Matthew is, amazingly talented. He's changing his driving style to be better.
Believe me, that's why I was bugging him again recently. I'm like, I want to hear about this. And until everybody eggs him on, he's not on the show yet. So that to me is fascinating. It's like anybody else at the top of their game. Tiger Woods back I'm redoing my golf swing way back when. It's like, what are people doing? But they're trying to get better because there is competition. There are people that are, let's say, more consistent or something else, or faster or slightly here and there. So that is amazing to realize that some of us that aren't there are thinking, I don't need to change anything. No, I mean, to be at the top of anything, you're going to have to keep evolving and changing and learning. But I want to circle back again, though. So if you were, watching video, or did you learn more by riding with them? What things stood out to you, or were you watching video and you saw things? Take us into how you actually were studying to figure out what to try to change and what you did change.
So my biggest thing was I thought that, that you had to like dive into things and late break to be fast. But the past year and a half, I have hopefully unlearned that because it never works. It just doesn't ever work. Late breaking just doesn't work. And so that was super helpful riding with them because even though they hard brake, it's not like last minute braking. They brake a lot sufficiently in time so that they can turn the car early. Both of them. And they both left foot brake, but I don't. So that, it was really aggressive because, they're like gas back on the, brake gas really quickly, which is fine because, I can do that with my right foot just fine. But yeah, that was the big thing. I think riding with them, you just see how aggressive they are, but it's like neatly aggressive. Like it's not aggressive like where they're pushing past things. It's aggressive, but it's very on point.
Yeah, no. So do you think you backed up your braking to where you're braking more in a straight line? Are you trying to trail brake at all? Or what did you take from that? Or what do you think you're doing now?
It's not so much like, let's see. It's more just braking harder earlier so that I can get the car turned because my car, it does like some trail braking because that helps the rotation. But sometimes you just need to brake and get the car set so you can turn. It's just that I was kind of braking too late and then going past things.
Yep.
And so I was losing so much distance and, scrubbing off so much speed that it's just, I backed up the braking zone and maybe a little bit more bolder braking. And so just making sure that I'm on the line. Even though sometimes it feels faster just to dive in and brake late, it's definitely not faster. It's much faster if you're like, oh, I want to be nice and tidy on this line, so I'm going to brake back here and just kind of carry some speed. It just ends up being faster.
I mean, I'm on the same journey right now, though I'm trying not to left foot brake anymore. Although this last event, first run, I'm laughing and I have a passenger. I'm like, my left foot's over the brake in the slalom. And right now, I hope I end up as a hybrid that I can actually bring it over at times, but usually not have it there. Because I do not ever lift. And now I want to ask both those guys, do they ever also just lift? Because when my left foot's over the brake, there is no thought of lifting. It's, I need to slow down here. So that's so interesting that, what you just learned and have implemented last year and a half is I think the biggest thing that people that are, let's say, a few seconds off the pace or a second or more, they blow the racing line, the tighter line in sweepers or any decent-sized turn because I think they're pushing out because they didn't slow down soon enough. I think that's right,
because it feels fast. It feels so exciting and fast. It's just not.
Yeah, you're going fast. You're at some max limit, but you didn't get much turning done because you've now scrubbed off speed, but you're 5 feet off the line, I guess. And it sounds like you've done way more coaching than even I have. I just see that over and over again. It's like you didn't slow down and you started turning and it went, rah, 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 rah. People need to realize the tires are screaming at you to say, you have to open the wheel and slow down. Two things are required here. These are not, you don't turn the wheel more. So it's so interesting that I think, at least, and tell me, you were probably already somewhat competitive, obviously, a year and a half ago. You'd already won 2 championships. And you still thought that was slowing you down a decent amount. Since doing that, how much faster, let's say local points-wise, would you say you've taken off 5 points or 10 points or 20 that you've gotten faster maybe?
I have no idea because I don't pay any attention to the points.
Oh, okay.
I know they're there and there's 900s and things. I just don't pay any attention to them because I don't know. I don't know. I'm just always trying to get better regardless of what those must say.
So what makes you say this is faster doing this? You're overall doing better nationally?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes you just feel like you're driving well. And I mean, you definitely I have a lot of people here locally to compare against. I have Grant Reeve and, all the guys in Panda and Mark Daddio and the Davises. So, I mean, I have so many top people here that if I even get close to near top 10 impacts, I am beyond thrilled.
Okay, so is that what you look at? You're looking at, let's say not points, but you're looking at where you're finishing overall.
Yeah, generally.
And that's probably gone up in the since you've been changing the braking? You've gotten a few spots. I know it gets hard to move up a few spots. Is. Okay.
definitely been helpful, and I definitely feel much better about not bombing into corners. And you can see it, like now I can see it when I'm instructing like novices and other people. You're just like, oh wow, you are way out here, and that is terrible. So it's kind of funny to recognize it in other people and realize that's exactly what I was doing.
Oh, I mean, I still do it at times because my MO has always been brake really late, really hard. That's where it's at. I just realized being consistent, that's not easy. It just, I feel like in pro solos back in the day, I'd pull off one of those on the left and one on the right, that I'd hit the right braking points. But it's so dicey that I don't know how often somebody can be competitive. Let's say you get to the challenge. You can't be driving like that anymore. And that finally hit me. That was one reason I was like, whoa, I've got to stop throwing in flyers. Literally, I realized I want to win challenges. I could not do that because I couldn't repeat it. It just, it didn't work. So that's another thing I think that people need to think about is the consistency of braking earlier just makes it so much easier. You have more time to not scrub off too much speed or to add a little bit more back in. And that's what I can say going to the right foot only. I feel like I have all this extra time. My brain at first was weird. It was like, what is your left foot doing? Why is your right foot almost going to the brake but not? I'm like, I'm coasting, which I think is terrible. But if you're in a turn, you're at max G's, and you notice your line going off, you can only coast or slow down.
It sounds much better if you call it a lift, because coasting does sound bad. So we'll just say lift.
But it's coasting. On the practice course at Spring Nationals, Jay and I went and made a whole bunch of runs, and I'm like, Jay, I'm just coasting right here. And I usually tell people never to coast, but I'm kind of at the max of this turn right here. It was the finished turn on the practice course. So maybe I was coasting for a half a second or second, but I was like, this is weird. I want to be using the brake or using the gas. I want to be doing something. And maybe I'll get better where I'm not supposedly coasting or lifting as much. But it was amazing how now that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, a lift in the slalom is all I needed. I didn't have to actually tap the brakes, which is exactly what I would have been doing. So, and I like that you brought up the schools of seeing that. I can't emphasize enough that riding with people and having them ride with you, school-wise or even locally, what you can pick up. Because when people ride with me, the same thing you saw was the aggression level on the brakes. I've had several people go, wow, now I get it. Because when I would tap the brakes in a Type R or an S2000, you really know that I just tapped the brakes. I want to get some speed going. So everybody out there, go coach and help somebody and have somebody help you. So you took all the Evo schools. At this point, have you taken any more schools to get extra seat time, or are you getting seat time at these schools in your own car afterwards?
Which school?
Any school you teach at. Are you also driving afterwards or anything?
So normally when I instruct, it's at regular events, like that's my work assignment. So I drive my car and then, I work instructing. But I do the novice schools as well. And a lot of times you'll drive the other people's cars. And then at the second half of the day, what they'll do is they'll have you take your students out in your own car. So you'll show them, like this is what we do. So yeah, it's good.
Getting seat time. I mean, you're getting enough seat time anyway, but one big focus I'm trying, and this comes back from interviewing David Whitener and knowing how much seat time they were getting, is renting a lot and going out there and just driving. That to me is still, I'm not getting as much seat time as you are, but via that I can get hours worth in a day. And it really, not everybody needs that to be fast, but when you realize some people are doing that and you want to compete against them, I don't think it's going to hurt me. It's like, oh, can I just get in a rhythm or routine? Andy Hollis comes to mind because he goes, I'd go out there and do a slalom for 15 minutes straight. I'm like, what? What
I don't know if I would do that, but I mean, like, seat time is fun. It's just fun to autocross, so why wouldn't you want to do it for hours?
So we've talked about the driving and such. Take us through, as you approach even walking a course. You show up to an event. What's your game plan? What are you thinking? Do you have a plan?
So for local events, I generally do like one social walk, which is pretty bad, I guess. So I don't, I just kind of walk around the course and just kind of look at things. It's Devon, so it only goes, you go one way. If you're going clockwise, you're going clockwise the entire day, and then it's a lot of transitional elements. So I just kind of look at it, make sure there's nothing crazy that I need to do, and then I also do the novice walk for the SCCA. So I end up, explaining lots of things to novices on that walk, so I get my fill there. But national events, that's when I usually walk the course a bunch more and actually try to pay attention. And here's when my good mentor Matthew Braun comes in again because he's got me to stop taking magical Porsche lines, which is what I would call them when I would all of a sudden be in a random place where my car couldn't go. But I would tell him, he's like, your car won't go there. And I'm like, but it's a magical Porsche. And then so he slowly dissuaded me from knowing that that is not the case. My Porsche may be magical, but it will not make like super 90-degree turns like 10 feet off of a cone all of a sudden. So I've fixed that, which has been helpful. And then also he's gotten me to the point where at the end or in the middle of a course walk, especially at nationals where they're really big, I stand off to the side and mentally in my head, go through the course. And another thing is Tony Savini, who is also wonderful and helpful. He has helped me decide that instead of saying it's just a slalom, I'll give them like silly names like, that's like the crooked slalom, or this is like the wave sweeper where, it goes up and down. So I'll just come up with names. And even though I know what the course means, I could say it back to somebody and they have no idea what it is because I've given every element like a silly name.
Is it a story that flows, or can you give us an example or recall one?
Let's see. So I don't know if it's a story, but for like, the Mineral Wells Pro Solo, because that one's fairly short. So it was like the drag race start and then like a turn to the left with an up wiggle and then down through the gap and then a big, huge showcase sweeper and then turn back up and it's like a right-left wiggle and then go around and there's a pinch and then a crooked like off-center finish. So it's just kind of like that. Like in my head, that means a lot to me, even though it means probably nothing to anybody else.
Now, while you're driving, do you repeat any of this?
I don't know if I have time to do that. Let's see, what do I do when I'm driving?
No, I'm just saying, so that's a memorization? Just so you can recall it with words tied to.
Yep, just so like, when I'm not walking the course at night before, then I can like walk myself through the course because I know what it is. Like when I said that, I knew exactly what the cones looked like in my head, that those were associated with the course. So
you're tying visual with, what's the word? I don't want to say the wrong word. Well, with vocal, you're tying those two things together for some reason that's helpful, which I've not thought about. I mean, these things are named, but there's something, I forget what it's called, but you're basically tying two different pieces in there for the visualization to make it more real. Now, as part of this, and you see the cones, are there key cones you're looking at? As you say, the little wiggle up the hill. I've already forgotten about that part of Mineral Wells. Like, I get the showcase and the little slot to get through there. It's kind of like a bent slalom to me. Are you seeing? You're seeing all the cones? You're seeing a couple cones? What do you recall from?
I usually pick out like just a couple key cones. Like I know like the whole general element, like when it's like the big showcase, I would try to find that exit cone that I knew I had to rotate my car around to get up through the next chute before the final finish sweeper.
So as a key cone is be next to that, rotate around that or something.
Yeah, and so I'll try to like pick that one out. But a lot of times, my problem is I dive towards cones, and so sometimes I have to pick like a back wall as opposed to the main cone that I need to get around because I'll just like beeline it for that cone. So I'll be like, oh, that outside wall, that's where I'm going to be looking because otherwise I will dive straight at this cone. So it depends on what the element is and where the exit is and what I need to be doing.
No, that's fascinating. I think there's more there than I'm even getting is, so I've never looked at the outside of courses. People will be like, I'm looking over there. But you just explained that and probably how our brains work differently. And like, I'll come right back to that. If I'm going through a slalom, I'll go left, right, left, right, left. I'm going to know there's 1, 2, 3, 4 inputs. So that's maybe how brains work differently or memories or how we want to recall things. I'm more so going 1, 2, 3. And my hands are going back and forth right now, like turn, turn, turn. And now I'm turning. And so I do that, and I'll try the naming thing to see if I can name something. Oh, the little wiggle here, the slot there. But what's interesting is when I picture a cone that I want to be next to, I'm also picturing some imaginary line around it, this arc. And people probably don't see me do this a lot, but a local guy, he'll stop on the course, like you said, and go through the course, and he'll be using his hands, it looks like karate or something, where he's going, he's drawing an arc. And since I just copy people that were fast, I saw him do that. So I'll do that. And sometimes when I'm driving, I feel like I'm driving really well, I will see that cone up there, and I will see this magical lower colored line, colored as in if I'm braking or accelerating, around that. Whereas you're picturing something to aim at, and I'm picturing something with a arc around it. So that's fascinating. Now I can now understand why people say they look at the outside cones and they're aimed at one of them, or the third one in the wall. I'm like, who the heck? Why you don't care about So you just helped me understand something, and hopefully some people will now realize if they're not doing any of this or one or the other, maybe they should try the other one because they may relate better, and that may help them get the correct line around things.
Yeah, because I'm not going to drive towards that outside wall. Like, I'm not driving, like, over there. It's just that if I visually, like, look that way briefly, I won't, pinch myself off on that cone that I need to actually get around.
Yeah, no, that's, you will aim at whatever you're looking at and not hit the cone in between that you need to arc around, let's say, is how I'm kind of picturing that your brain's kind of working there. Like, I need to be over the angle to hit that or to go toward that for a while, and then you'll pick up.
Yeah.
So since you don't walk courses locally a lot, or a fun and a SCCA, you're doing a novice walk, I'm thinking you're pretty good at looking ahead. Do you have a thought or judgment on how you perceive the courses as you're driving?
Yeah, so that's like everybody's constant challenge is looking ahead. But I mean, I can generally go out without walking the course and be pretty good at it. So, and I feel like, that's good practice just to be able to keep looking ahead. And like I said, Devens is, you go one way. So it's not like I have to worry about looping back in on myself and getting lost. I know I'm not going to get lost.
Yeah.
So I'm not terribly worried about that.
Is it long and skinny?
So
being an airstrip?
It actually goes in like a pentagon type of shape where, there's sides and you go around this middle section. Yeah, so there's runways. There's like a couple different runways and a little taxiway. So it's just like a really big, multi-sided thing.
All right, everybody, you got that picture in your mind? I'm a little confused, but I get the point that it's, at least for us, we had a long, skinny lot. It was left, right, left, right, left, right, turn around, left, right, come back.
What if you picture like a shopping mall and you know how there's like a road outside the shopping mall that goes around it? It's like that. So
you always know, like you're saying, once you know the direction, you just have to look at the offsets or whatever else is there, and you're going to come back.
Yeah, and you know that you're going to be turning, like, there'll be like some sort of sweeper going this way around every one of those little runway turns because you always go down this runway, and then you go down that runway, and then you turn onto this runway. So you always, have a general idea of where you're going to be going.
Yeah, that's you saying looking ahead. I feel like when I'm not doing well, even at a pro, I'm not looking ahead anymore. I'm like, I kind of know where I'm going now. I'm just not being as detail-oriented as to, I'm close to this cone, but oh, damn it, I wasn't looking that cone ahead and that cone ahead to really, I guess I'm always looking ahead somewhat, but my eyes aren't moving enough. They're getting fixated too long. Or something's happening, I'm getting lazy, like, I know what, this is fine, this is great. And so sometimes I'm then, while driving, saying, where am I going, where am I going, where am I going? To challenge myself, you got to look up and see where the heck you're going next. Because like you said.
That's super helpful. Yeah, talking out loud about where you're going next is so helpful.
Yeah, that's why I wonder if you were naming these things like, oh, here comes the Kinkle or the whatever's next or the showcase. And where's my exit or something. Mm-hmm. So I think for some people that being vocal and saying, where am I going? Oh, the next feature is that's really going to help them pick their eyes up and look to see. I've got to link this arc into that arc or know that I've got to get behind those cones. So the vocal thing, I definitely, if people haven't tried it, please try that.
Yeah, no, that was definitely super helpful because you have to be able to you have to look ahead if you have to name it. So if you can't name it, then obviously you're not looking ahead.
Yeah. So I've got to ask anyway, for people that don't walk the course a lot, do you have certain tactics for a sweeper besides braking early or a slalom, or are there any specific things you think about? You said you just kind of go out there and drive, and I can relate to that. So it's okay if you say, no, I just go drive. I'm just that good. That's just me.
I don't know. I don't mean to sound braggy, but I'm pretty decent at slalom. So if there's a slalom, then I just kind of do it. The sweepers are always usually my nemesis because I don't get a ton of them. And, you just got to, once you do it wrong once, then usually you can, work on it a second time if you haven't walked the course. But I've been trying just to stay, tighter and cut distance on things because I don't have a ton of horsepower to get back out. So
you've got, what is the horsepower rating on that car? Torque and power, if you know it.
Yeah, it's 290 horsepower and 250 torque, which, maybe sounds like a lot, but compared to the other cars in the class, it's really not.
Yeah. Everything's relative to the competition. That's where in SSC, people, I'm like, Yeah, it's not. It's kind of fun, but it's not very quick. There's not a lot going on there. That's where I call it my Miata, because now I really have to pay attention to the lines. And as Brian Peters pointed out, if I scrub off speed in the middle of a sweeper, forget it. He goes, that just killed you. I was like, really? He goes, get your left foot off the brake. I'm like, oh, I think it's okay. But I'm like, nope, I'll take the challenge. I can do this. So it's interesting. We all want more power, especially if we're in the underpowered car in the class, for sure. Thinking that.
Yeah, I definitely always want. Somebody gave me a hard time the other day because I was like, my Porsche is so much slower than my BMW in a straight line.
Yeah. You're like, and I'm driving it very well though. Yeah, that's right. Different cars. So do you still have the BMW?
Yeah, I've got 180,000 miles on it, so.
Might as well just keep it and put 300 on it. Just keep
going.
Yeah,
just keep it forever.
Yeah. All right, so we covered the courses here. I'm going through mentally in my mind here. Were you always pretty good at slaloms? Was that something that just came natural?
Well, at one point I was bad at everything, so.
Yeah.
It's just that Devens is a runway course, so we get a lot of slalom.
Yep.
And I don't think I knew I was good at slalom, but lately, when you compare, the past couple of years when I've been having other people drive with me, or if I drive somebody else's car and they have data or anything, it's like, oh, well, you just killed me in that slalom because, so I was down in Texas in April and I drove Carrie and Jeremy's 1M with them. And there was like a 5-cone slalom, and I literally gained a 10th on them on every slalom cone. So, yeah. So I was like, I guess I'm okay at slaloms.
Yeah. And I got to talk to Jeremy a little bit there, and he mentioned that you'd come down there and such, and how quickly you were very, very, very fast. So.
Oh, well, their car is amazingly set up, so they get huge props for setting that car up really well.
So do you know how you attack a slalom?
Let's see. Usually, what do I do? I definitely brake going into it so that I can get behind the first cone, unless it's obviously like a useless, sometimes there's like a 3-cone slalom where you just have to get around the middle cone, and then that way I won't bother trying to backside the first cone. But I usually try to get myself, set up so that I have like a really good speed going into it. So I'll brake heavy into the slalom, and then, gas and lift usually. I usually gas and lift throughout the slalom. So I'm not steady speed throughout the slalom. I'll always just try to modulate the speed, as I'm turning.
Based on what? Are you lifting to get more front grip, or are you just based on your line?
Based on feel.
Okay, good.
It's just like, I think this feels good. No, it's so bad. It sounds like I have no idea what I'm doing. But, literally it's just like, I feel like the car could go faster here. And then I'll be like, but I need to lift. And I'm sure, when you talk to people who actually know things, they'll be like, it helps set the car and set the front end so you can turn. But, I just do it because it feels right and fast.
Well, and here's, I think, the whole key to racing. You're doing what you feel like will keep you on the line while going as fast as you can go. I think that's how I would summarize what you're doing, based off feel. Mm-hmm. I can go faster. Yeah. I should lift a little bit here. I should go faster. And something that just came up to me very, very recently is I keep telling people percentages of accelerating, percentages of lifting. And I'm really playing around with this car, the SSC car on the street a lot. I'm like, wow, I'm probably adding like 2% more power, or 3 or 4. I used to think it was 10, 20, 30, or 40. Well, in these cars with no power, from I'm accelerating a little bit to full acceleration, there's nothing there. There's like, there's no big difference here. So it's so minute that I think in a slalom, maybe you're doing big lifts if you really want something to rotate or something crazy. But it's very refined is what I'm realizing. Even driving my little neighborhood with windy roads, I can lift just a little bit and notice the front end tuck in. And in a slalom, which is really fast-paced, those little things can make a big difference, I think, of lifting, and then just a little more gas and lifting. And you're just taking in enough things to know, to have the feel of, I can do more or less. Somehow throughout that.
Sorry, I guess.
Yeah. But we're coming back to...
I guess it's good that I have feel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where... And I'm really trying to work on the feel on the street, like just not even at max grip anywhere close to it. Just notice things. Did I hit that little pebble? Did I hit that little dip right there? Those things I really, because I don't know how I get the feel that I have. I don't know how I do what I do per se. And we got to come back to, though, you said you're braking the slalom. Are you braking before the cone, during the first cone? I realize this is all dependent on how big the slalom is. But what do you kind of mean by breaking into the slalom?
Yeah, so before I get to the slalom, I'm braking so that, I can turn around the first cone usually.
So you're scrubbing off speed via the brake or the turning to get lined up to be late apexing the first cone per se.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. I was, of course, hoping you were saying you were braking after the first cone, which is opposite what Brian Peters would ever do. But damn it, you did not say that. I was so hoping.
Good. So I'm doing what Brian Peters does.
Yes,
so
he does not.
Hopefully I will be fast.
He does not like the braking. My thought of I like to scrub off speed going past the first cone, which it's just like late braking really, really late. It is very, very, very dicey. In my mind, it's better. But it's so easy to then be off the second cone or not be able to late apex it. So I don't recommend people doing that because Brian Peters did not say it was okay. And I was hoping you would because then I was going to pit you two against each other, but that's all.
Oh, no. Well, I don't think we're on the same level, but I'm glad I'm on the Brian Peters camp of slaloming and braking at the same time.
I'm going to find somebody, Mark Daddio, maybe Matthew Brunt. Somebody's going to jump in here and be like, yes, I used to do it this way, but I now do it like Brian Peters. I'm like, damn it. Me too. We're all giving in. So we got slaloms. We walk the course. You coach. You got these fast people in your car. When you went down to Texas, data. So you don't have data because you said when you get in other people's cars with data. Is this true?
No, I have a co-driver this year, which, I'm driving my own car, obviously, the past couple of years, and I never had a co-driver before. I just, one-off have somebody drive with me. But this year I have a co-driver, and he is in charge of the data. So this year I have data.
Oh, cool.
I still am better with video. Like, I've had video for, a few years, and I feel like I can look at the video better so there's a problem, and it's a good thing and a bad thing. I am hypercritical of myself at almost everything. Like, I'm just hypercritical of every little thing, which is good to a point where you're just like, well, I could have done this, and this, and this, and this, and this better. And then you kind of have to back that up and be like, well, it's good that I can pick out all these terrible things, but, you can only improve so many things and focus on so many things. So then it's the point where, I can see all this on the video that I don't like or that I was, I'm trying to do this and somehow I did something else. But then I have to kind of pick one or two things that will make the biggest difference for me to actually work on.
And work on versus in between runs? Or is this work on as in afterwards an event you're looking at something and saying, I've got to improve this? I want to break
for national events, no, I'll definitely watch the video between runs. And so that way I can be like, I definitely screwed that up, so I would like to fix that one thing. And then I'll go out and try to fix either, one or two things. I don't do much video for local events because most of the time you kind of realize that you screwed things up. So you're just like, well, I screwed that up, so I'll go work on that. And in most of the local events, we get 6 to 8 runs per event. So there's a lot of time to try to make things better there.
Yeah, and that's where I challenge myself. I keep thinking I should treat them all like they're national level events, but I do the same thing. This last event, I finally actually loaded the Garmin app on my phone. I was watching my videos between runs. I was like, this is really convenient. I have AC, I'm sitting in a car, and I didn't touch the camera. I'm simply, this has been out for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years, and I'm like, I should actually install the app and connect it to my phone. That was nice. I didn't have SoloStorm running, so I didn't look at that. Are you all looking at data between runs? Is he doing that and telling you anything? Or you're just going to watch the video and say, I don't care if it's half a second or 0.2 or...
Yeah, so I will watch the video, and then he's supposed to be in charge of the data. And so he will then, go through and show me some things, and I'll be like, okay, well, that sort of makes sense. It's just, it's still, the whole data thing is still a bit new to me, so it's hard to implement. You'd be like, well, if you took this, corner half a mile quicker, and I'm like, I don't know. That's not very concrete for me. So I'm working on making the data work better for me. So I will, it just takes some time, I think, to actually figure out what the data is telling you, and then actually how do you solve that problem.
Yeah. So let me guess, on the video, are you mostly looking at line entrance or... What's a hypercritical thing?
Yeah, so lines and inputs, what did I do? How much did I turn, or did I quick hand it, or did I just turn late? And then sometimes it's terrible, and I'll actually yell at myself. So I'll be like, oh, well, I definitely screwed that up because, I yelled at something terrible.
Oh, you yelled while driving?
Yeah,
Oh.
I tend to talk a lot while
I
I'm
do that
driving.
too.
It's pretty bad.
I do that. And I look at the course workers and wonder if they're looking at me. I mean, I plainly remember I missed my apex, and I'm like, ah! I look over and I'm like, I wonder if they
Yep.
see. Like, what's this guy's problem? Like, shouldn't he? And for me, I get mad at myself. I'm like, dude, can you focus? Can you, like, look at the next cone even though you screwed that one up? So it's so funny that I take the time to look over and like, are they looking at me? I'm looking at me. I'm
Sometimes I'll
hearing
just
me.
like throw my hands up. I'll let go
Yep.
of the wheel. Be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Which I don't recommend, but sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, and that's probably just what I'd call a bad habit. It's like looking in the mirrors. Did I hit that cone? Is that course worker moving? And so now I'm glad that
Do
this
that
car,
too.
I can turn the mirrors in. So I'm like, I need to remember that. That's probably a big key here. End one bad habit by saying there's no mirror to look into. Unless I can run a 180 and then I can be like, is that person moving? But wait, is the cone down or just out of the box? Yeah, and I don't know what percentage of people are doing that, but that's got to point to some weird trait, and maybe it's the hypercritical part of, did I do that and should I reprimand myself right now for what may have happened back there? Versus, I just want to focus, right? I just want to be like, can I focus for the next 40 seconds of this course or whatever, this run? That's kind of, maybe it's the critical part of us that really wants to go back there and know, wait, did we screw that up? Did we really hit that cone?
Yeah, because I definitely catch myself looking in the mirrors. I'm just like, how did I not hit that cone?
Yeah. Which is the key. I mean, anybody fast, you're touching a few cones here and there. That's one thing I got to tell everybody. In the pro solo challenges, I've worked a few of them like punishment. If I don't make a challenge, sometimes I go and work the challenge because not only is it punishment, but I can then watch people and learn and see their lines. So that to me is a neat little, if you have any energy left over. But man, it is crazy how often people are touching the cones. So you have to go like reset them, especially in slaloms. Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. The fast people are not very far off those cones at all because it adds a lot of distance. So that a pet peeve of mine is check the cones, make sure they're still lined up in their box even. Because I notice that as I drive, and then I yell at you, and if I'm yelling at you and pointing, that means I'm not mad at me, I'm mad at the cone. That's a little bit of, I should have a radio to everybody, be like, that cone, check it, number 45, that one's not good there. So all right, hypercritical, you've got data now, or data. I think I caught you saying data. You're trying to figure out how to integrate that.
I probably say it both ways.
Okay, very good. What do? We brake a car. We use the brakes. I'm learning. People keep helping me remember brake versus broke. I broke with my car. I broke the car. Whatever that is. Back, focus. Sometimes you need to focus like a autocross run here. So with the data and the visual, on the video, you're noticing hands and line. I bet here at some point you're going to start looking at those lines and realize, especially if you just watch the video, where that would show you. I get that the speed thing, half a mile an hour is, most every run myself I'm going to be different depending on braking at different points by a mile an hour, 2 or 3. Although that's a big difference over time. But I agree that wouldn't make much sense. I swear data to me shows over and over the tighter line was faster.
Yeah, for the most part, that's what I've learned this year. I'm like, oh, look, I took a better line, and it was like this way.
Yep.
I'm like, well, somehow I was carrying more speed and taking a tighter line.
Yeah. That's the scariest thing of all. Is like, oh, look, I went up there wider, and I was at less miles per hour. And then I start thinking, is there satellite drift? Like, how could I dare do that? That makes no sense. And then I remember, oh, there's like gravel and marbles and all kinds of crap. And once you get into that, you can't go as fast. So, yeah. Hopefully some of that, I can't wait to hear in the future. We'll see each other somewhere. I'll be like, hey, are you using the data? You'll be like, maybe yes, maybe no. It may be interesting. You may say a year or 2 years from now. Doesn't matter. You can check out the video and you find enough, like you said, 2 or 3 things you can work on for the next run and go at it.
Well, there's definitely always things to work on, so that'll never end.
Well, what's crazy is I think for me, I've gotten in a bad habit over the past, 3, 4, 5 years. I come back and just kind of start doing things instead of stop and say, hey, what just happened during that run? Whereas if I was to stop and watch the video, even if I didn't care to try to remember, I would then see the thing. So that is something I may start trying to make myself do, especially being lazy now and sitting in the AC of a car. Just watch the video, right? Or watch the 3D video. Yeah. Let me see what's really going on here. Virtual reality.
Yeah, they make it so easy. Just Bluetooth it, sit in your air-conditioned car.
I was like, this is nice. I'm going to watch
that. Make your co-driver do all the other things, like check the tire pressure.
No kidding, and I didn't have one. They go. I'm like, wait, I didn't check my tire pressures after 2 runs. I should probably check this. This is the last run. I need to check. So that's interesting. So video, which I've heard from several people, the Jeff and Nicole Wong, they do video. That's their thing. So it's amazing how many people can look at video and really pull enough out of that's all they really need as you want to get better and notice things. So I appreciate you sharing that and how you kind of look at that. And the hypercritical, it's amazing that you can go through a run and let's say pick out 10 things. I can always pick out something. I mean, you could say, hey, you just won, but I'd be like, but I screwed that turn up. And
yes. So terrible.
Yeah, I know. But I think as to continue to try to grow for some of us, that's just the path. That's how our brain kind of works. Like, hey, obviously I can be better because, look, I know I screwed up 5 things over here. That could have been, should have been better. I was off that cone. And that's another thing. When I've watched some runs where I've done really well, I'm like, but I wasn't on that cone. But that tells me that at least I, more so than everybody else at the time in the class, I was at the maximum grip on the best line overall for longer is how I kind of think of that.
Yeah, because I'm sure everybody else screwed things up too. So it's whoever screws up the least, basically, but you always just want to try to get better.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that. We got to circle back to the magical line. Magical Porsche lines. So many people
the magical Porsche.
Walk that. Actually, because you do novice schools, you should have them walk where they think they're going to drive and tell them when they do that. Because so many people. I mean, I now call people out, and especially if I know them, it's even easier. But if I don't know them, I might be like, do you think you can turn like that? And I really think it's because they're having a social walk and they're just walking. Maybe you were planning, you're like, no, I'm going to come over here and all of a sudden turn. David Whitener, I think in the podcast said he knows at speed, I don't know what speed, I'm sure for every like 14 or 15 steps forward, he can take 1 step over. So he made this a very simple like pattern. Like, no, by the time I get way up there 20 feet over, or 20 feet ahead, I can only be 2 feet over or whatever it was. I thought that was very helpful that people could kind of figure out. They could use it to think, oh yeah, how much can I turn at 40 miles an hour? To make lines much more realistic as you walk them. So that's cool that, who'd you say that? Wasn't Tony Savini. Somebody else told you to do that.
Oh,
Matthew
that
Braun.
was Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to walk the course, I really think people should be realistic. And that's where I even walk the course and say, I'm not going to be that tight. I know it's not going to happen in certain places, whereas other times I'm overly walking tight to try to reinforce, I want to be tight here to be set up for that, or I want to keep the distance off. So sometimes I'm watching.
I do that too occasionally.
Yeah, the magical tight line. No, you're gonna do this. You're gonna be tight this time. No, this has been fun. I like the insights. So you've driven all these cars. You said the SMF car is one of the favorites. What do you pick out as favorite car, favorite event?
Favorite car or event? I mean, I really like my Cayman. I would like maybe a slightly newer Cayman with a disc, but clashing for Porsches isn't all that fabulous unless you have a lot of money. I mean, I was lucky enough that one of my local friends who was down in Florida in March, he let me drive his 991 GT3 at the Fort Myers Pro Solo. So, I mean, that was a whole lot of fun because we got to use launch control and just go really, really fast.
And how much did that behave and feel like your car?
Well, the steering wheel felt like my steering wheel, but otherwise, it's completely different.
Like handling and such, I realize it has tons of power, but how did that?
Oh, it has so much power. I mean, it rotates, obviously, because, it's even more rotating because it's got all the weight in the rear end as opposed to mid-engine, but everything just happens so much faster and with so much more speed, and it was just like, my car times a million. But yeah, no, I love it. It was great, and I'm really lucky because a lot of people will let me drive their cars locally. So I've driven, a 997 GT3 RS, GT4s, like the 991 GT3. So I'm really lucky to drive all the fancy cars.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, that's why I stopped at a Porsche dealership. It's all Salil's fault. I mean, I've always wanted one, but I was like driving that GT3 for a season. Just every run, I hopefully thanked him. I was like, this was a lot of fun. Like, this car really scoots as it gets going. Like, it just really, really, really likes to go. Mm-hmm. So I can somewhat relate. I've not been in the newest one. That might be the end-all, be-all. You're like, hey, and it will shift if it needs to shift and downshift, or maybe I got a paddle or whatever. I don't know, but that.
Yeah, I know. People give me a hard time because I'm like, but the Germans are so clever. Like,
And eventually, if I ever make it to a track consistently, someone this weekend was like, and it's just nicer to have it be able to just paddle shift. You don't have to worry about heel and toe. In my case, you don't have to learn how to do that. Although I really am practicing third to second gear shifts in the SSC car because of the weird gearing. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I should daily drive and practice this as much as possible for the few courses we will get to do this on. But yes, everybody adds GT3 to the wish list. We've got you written down. We've got you marked here. Let the dealerships know.
I want the GT4 though, because Cayman.
And
I'm just partial to Cayman, so.
And you've driven some of those?
Yep. I've driven a couple of GT4s locally. So.
And feeling since the engine's not quite as far back, it's not quite as rotaty?
It's just so well behaved. I mean, you definitely feel the lack of power when you go from one to the other. Yeah. Like, if I go from my Cayman to the GT4, I'm like, oh wow, it's got so much power. But then if I go from like the GT3 to the GT4, I'm like, oh, it's so slow. Yeah. Which is terrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But yeah, I just like it because I think it looks better and it's mid-engine, so I feel like it's more balanced. And it's a little bit easier to control because there is less power.
Well, and since I was just at the dealership, supposedly the 4 liters coming out, they say nothing about an RS version coming out. That was my real questions to them. I was like, will an RS come out? We do not know. I'm like, but someone leaked from Australia that there was one. We don't know anything about that. We know nothing. It's like, how cool could that be if it came out? Like, just tell me now. Tell me that you have some secret file and you'll tell me what's on there and how much power it has and how low the price tag will be. Just make this all, and then you'll make plenty of them, right? Not just 500.
Yeah, they're funny with their limited numbers.
Yeah, and my wife's with me, and she's like she's like, wait, why? They had a GT2 RS that had just sold. It was on there for 2 days. I forget it was 150,000 or 180,000 over. And the sales guy was like, yeah, I was kind of surprised like that they priced it this high, and it sold in 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We probably just lost everybody on our little Porsche rant.
No, that's fine. Now, see, I'm coming over to the dark side or the fun side. It's like, I just made myself. I said, you gotta go to the dealership. You gotta talk to people and see. And what I was blown away at, having never gone, was how many cool cars the owner had there. And maybe you know what this is, and we're gonna keep talking about this because it's fun. There was one that's painted gold and black. Although they had to show me photos because under a cover, but they have weaved gold into the carbon fiber. Like there is gold weaved into it.
Oh. Yeah, I think they have wheels like that too for them.
Yeah, and maybe that same car had that. I was like, what? He goes, yeah. I was like, why is the cover on that car? And it was behind a rope even. I'm like, I kind of really want to see that now. Like, this is kind of getting crazy. But, yeah, we're going to limit these, and we're going to make a few of these, and we're going to make the 911R. That's a manual for all you all, without wings. I didn't know what that car either, so I don't know a ton about Porsches, except that there are a lot of very cool ones there, and he knew enough to explain it all to me. So do you have any wish list cars besides those? Like, are you ever thinking that if someone built you a car or you could mod a car again?
I really like the challenge of driving around the cars, like stock cars problems. I kind of like that, like the challenge. I mean, all the people who build cars are super talented, and I don't want to take that away from them. But like, I think the most I would ever do is there's a local person who's building an STU Boxster, which is basically you get to fix the problems that the Boxster has. You get to add camber and put in a diff, and it's still like streetable. So I think that's as far as I would ever go, but I really do enjoy the street class because, I can change tires and change my oil, and that's all I really have to do. I don't have to bring spare parts and fix things, and then I can just be like, well, this car has problems, but I'm going to use this car's strengths and use my own driving skills to just maximize that. I really like the street class.
Oh, yeah, and I remember from talking to you in Mineral Wells, will you tell us the setup? I think you said they're pretty much all the same for those cars as you hopped in someone else's car. Is there a magical setup? Is there a standard setup now for these?
Yeah, everybody thought I was driving my Cayman at Mineral Wells, and I was just like, well, it's a white Cayman S, so it's basically my car because the majority of all the B Street Caymans all have PASM and Sport Chrono, so it's got Porsche Active Suspension, which is a fabulous button that stiffens the shocks. Basically, it like closes off a chamber, so it makes it like a little bit stiffer. And then the Sport Chrono, which is it changes some throttle mapping, and it has like different. I think it's transmission mounts, and it's got a cute little clock on the dash, and so that's what the Sport Chrono does. So everybody has those two options. And then we all put in the Tarrant GT3 front sway bar because we have to try to compensate for our open diff. So we got, stiffen up that. And basically the difference between these Caymans is your wheel choice. We're all using the, 8.5, 10 wheel choices, but it's just like, well, what style of wheel do you have? And we're all running basically the 265, 285 Bridgestones. So basically you can hop into, most B Street Caymans and you'd be like, well, it's basically my Cayman except that, I like my wheels better.
Now, is there a toe in or toe out in the front or rear or anything?
Oh, yeah, and basically all the alignments are the same, too. We all max out the front camber, which I said is like, -1 at the max, and then we all have a little bit of toe out between, a 16th and an 8th. And then usually the toe in the rear is neutral, and then about -2 rear camber.
Nice. So that's one thing I tell people is, like, I can't believe it. I feel like I've been hit my head against the wall a few times and actually didn't even realize it. In SSC, like, not having played with all these things, I usually buy a car that someone else has already won in or won in a car just like it, like a Type R Integra, and say, what do I do? Mm-hmm. And they tell me the alignment. In SSC, even though we heard kind of what the things were, we learned like nasty habits of, we're going to add a little toe in the rear to make the car more stable in California. Well, that took out camber. So effectively it felt no different. So I think that's huge if people aren't trying to reinvent the wheel or trying to figure it out, especially if you're like, am I any good at this? If your alignment's all off, that's huge. Like I've had really, really bad alignments and paid a lot of money for alignments and thought, I can't believe I spent that much money, but yet then I was so consistent because the car was aligned correctly. So I think that's huge that somebody could go get a Porsche now and join you and say, oh, what are these settings? Let me go listen to the podcast and get this all dialed in.
Yeah, and they should. After Ryan Clark won B Street last year, we've had a good number of Caymans, I think, come out this year, so that's fun.
Yeah, when he had that for sale, it's like, it's a Porsche, and it won, and it's fast. So what years are...
But now he has a fancier Porsche, so it's okay.
what years are legal in B Street?
2006 through 2008. Because
those are the only ones with an open diff.
Yeah, so it's a 9871. It has a little less power than the 9872. It has an open diff. You can get a diff in the newer version. And those are mainly the changes. It's just, a little less power and an open diff.
So did you
because the 9872s are in A Street.
Did you write the letter to get the .2 put into B Street?
No, is there a letter to get the .2 put into B Street?
Maybe somebody should write one. I mean, you wrote one.
I would like the Cayman GTS, the 981 in A Street. I think that would be a fun car.
And I know somebody that I believe has already written that letter because they're local here and they have one. And they're like, yeah, it's not going to compete. Evidently, what is it?
In Super Street.
Yeah, the suspension's very similar to GT4, but they're underpowered. Or there were several things he told me. He's like, there's no way this should be nearly as fast as the GT4. It just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, so that would be like a fun thing for A Street, but Porsches are usually slow to move in SCCA classing, so I'm not holding my breath.
That mid-engine is still scaring some people. Maybe the word will get out that it's okay, it's not magical. It doesn't. See, people saw you walking and said, see, Porsches do magical lines. So no one driving a Porsche should walk magical mid-engine lines because it doesn't really do that. It doesn't just
scares everybody.
Yeah. We know those mid-engines just pivot. They just pivot. They don't have to do like a steering wheel.
They just turn on the dime.
Yeah, they just turn them. They're limited to 1 degree of front camber, and they still pivot somehow. It's just magical.
Yeah, those open diffs, they're really fast.
Yeah. So did you play around and test like more negative camber in the rear? Or maybe because the front's so limited,
for
you
a
wouldn't do that?
while, I actually ran toe out in the rear to try to get it to rotate more. But yeah, less camber and the silly thing is, so you actually can't do a lot less camber because Porsche, they're eccentric bolts, but they will only let you go down to like, I think negative 1.6 was the minimum amount of negative camber that the bolts would actually let you go because apparently the Germans don't want you they think you're going to drive off the road if you have no camber in the rear. So I tried to get no camber at one point when I wanted the car to rotate, but it doesn't happen.
You can't do that. I need crash bolts that will let me. You need to see if they make anti-camber crash bolts because it got so crashed that you need to now dial it back to their 1.7. That's weird. Since I owned a Audi product, I realized no, this is perfect. I remember talking. I think it was John Ames once again. He's like, no, I talked to him about, or I sent letters when I worked at some point. He's like, no, they think they did it perfect. They don't want you to adjust it.
Of course, because that's what the Germans do. They make all the perfect cars.
This is perfect. We need not change any of this. No, I want negative camber. Really, I do. You have a bunch of control arms here, but they're not adjustable. This is weird. This is perfect.
Oh, it's so silly.
Yeah, that's where I think people it seems like Mazda, they seem to actually kind of care and think, oh, what can we do? Oh, we don't need as much horsepower as an S2000. We could do this and this and this better and take out weight. I feel like there's somebody over there or a group that's kind of paying attention. Maybe I'm totally off basis here, but it just seems like they're like, we're going to keep making these fun cars and people are going to autocross them and do well on them.
Oh, I was almost excited. We almost made it through the podcast without mentioning Mazda.
I'm sorry. I've never owned one. Does that help at all?
That's okay, yeah. I'll take that.
But, and now because I brought it up and you brought it up, we've got to talk. What's silly is anybody new, I wish I would have, after buying several cars, realized they said it's really great to start in one. Now, you didn't, and you're fast. I didn't start in one. I've become kind of quick. So I don't think you have to, but I think it's not a bad deal.
I think if you have fun, I think that's the biggest thing. Like my car, my BMW had 300 horsepower, and it was just fun, and I had a good time. So I think as long as people are having fun, that they'll come back.
True, they'll come back. And in your case, either competitiveness was there right away. I kind of see it as different groups here. But the fun thing, if it wasn't fun at all, we'd probably lose several events and say we're not coming back. It wouldn't be. So you obviously did the contest and you won because you said you played the flute and you won the contest?
Oh, the talent show last year?
The talent show. So how much of the fun and camaraderie do you now have friends all across the country because of this crazy sport?
Yeah, so that is the best part. I call them my little team, but they're random people throughout the country. So I have my co-driver who is living in New York City, so he drives to national events with me. And then I have Tony Savini and Jeff Jacobs from Pennsylvania, and so they're like Tony's my mental coach mainly. He super helps me out with that, and we do lots of course walks. And then I have Matthew Braun, who is my driver coach, and then it's great because, Tony will, build me up mentally, be like, you know how to do this, it's great. And then Matthew will be like, you screwed that up, you should really fix that. Like, if I try to get down on myself, he'll just be like, he just tries to keep it super real, like in the nicest possible way, of course. He's just like, just go do it. Like, what are you complaining for? So that's nice that he's, keeps it real like that. And then, I have Heidi, who is one of she's super great about, cheering me on and always supportful, and she's from New York. So it's really great. And in Mineral Wells, the guy who let me drive his car, Evan, he had never met me before. So, I mean, how great is that you let some crazy random person come down and drive your Porsche? So it's really nice that everybody is really so friendly.
Yeah, true. Like, you can't do the track events. Oh, come on down and drive my car. Oh, wait, I'm going to be driving my car. It is pretty amazing how many people are like, oh, I tell people all the time, oh, come out and try this. I've got some cars. I'll get you in a car. And I'm pretty sure most people think I'm nuts and I won't do that. But I'm like, I'll get you addicted if you're dare into this. Like a friend of mine, she has a Boxster S. I'm like, I'll even bring the S2000 out or something else and let you drive it so you don't think you might tear up your car. I'm like, I'm just itching to get her out there to see if she'll try it because she seems to like to drive. I'm like, come on out. Let's drive around some cones and see if you get addicted to this as well. Oh, and he let a crazy person, but he didn't know you were crazy yet. Of course, now people are going to realize you're not crazy because of the podcast. You might even have more rides across the country.
I don't know. We have talked a lot about Porsches. That might make me kind of crazy.
There are some Porsches across the country, so that might put you in good company. They'll be like, now the Miata people may not be opening there's a few people that are probably now going to hopefully make an offer. Be like, you got to come drive my Mazda
that's
product.
Fine. I don't drive Miatas. It's okay.
Oh. Okay, go ahead and just make it very, very apparent to everybody that you really don't want to drive a Miata.
Oh, I think everybody if they know me, they already know that. It's fine.
A CSP
I know,
Miata?
I sound like a complete snob. It's hilarious.
CSP Miata?
Bob and Billy have actually, since they're local to me, and they know how much I dislike Miatas. Like, I realize that they're really good at what they do, Miatas. It's just that I don't personally want to drive one. But they're like, we need to get you in our CSP car, and then you'll like them. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that as well because those things, what I hear, and watching Scott Frazier drive one out on the West Coast for so long, it is insane how fast those cars are. I remember the one was for sale for like 19 or 20 grand. I'm like, I don't know if you can go faster for that amount of money. A cart, but I'm like, this is nuts. Watching those cars go around. I'm like, do they ever really have to brake? They just seem to go.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that they're good at what they do. It's just that I don't want one.
Yeah, you don't want one. Yet. Someday she'll be like, someone's going to have a CSP Miata and let me win a championship in it. There we go.
No way. Not happening.
No, seriously, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So anybody's car, that's not a Mazda. You can tell me after the show if there is a Mazda you really do want to drive. Are there any cars you've seen across the country you would want to get a chance to drive?
I don't think so. See, I'm not really into, like, I know most of the people who answer this question all want to drive, like, mod cars and things, but I have no desire to drive those because, I don't know, it's not, to me, it's not like a car. I really like cars because, you know, they're imperfect. Like, all those people who build those fabulous, really, really fast mod cars, they're great, and, like, they've done a great job doing what they do, but they're just, maybe they're too good. It's just too much, and it's not, like, flawed enough. It's not, you know, like a car. I like cars because I like the way cars look and they have style, which is terrible because I'm sounding like a girl that I'm picking cars based on how they look. But
you seem to like style, though. It's
know.
okay. You're Rachel with the hat that also Rachel drives a Porsche.
Yeah, so, you know, and it just appeals to me as a car. Like, it's a nice place to be. Like, I feel like in my Cayman, it's a really nice place to be. I enjoy being in it. It's a good time. It looks somewhat stylish, you know, and I have a good time. So, no, I don't think there is because, you know, I really do like, obviously, the GT4s and GT3s, but I've driven those and I have them locally, and I don't think there's any car that I'm just like, oh, I wish I could drive that.
Have you driven a GT3 RS?
Yes, I have.
Oh, and you didn't even
on
pick
Hoosiers.
it. And you didn't even pick it. It doesn't matter. It was the Hoosiers were too perfect, too grippy. What?
Oh, it was amazing. The car did everything. It was pretty phenomenal. And it was Viper green. So.
Whoa! Even with the engine in the wrong spot, it was still that good.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was a little bit too far back, that engine, but.
But you like the rotating Civic. You should like the rotating GT3.
No, I love the GT3. I hope we're.
But the Cayman is really slightly better. I mean, I
do just really like the Cayman.
I get it from the purist. Believe me, that's why. My wife's like, which one do you like more? I'm like, well, the GT3 looks somewhat, but I'm like, this one's better because where the engine's at. Like, in my mind, that's my more deciding factor. It's not like which one looks. I'm like, this one is supposed to be better. I'm trying to, like, halfway explain this, like, why
and it
I
has
think.
more storage. There's way more storage in a Cayman.
Oh, there you go. That's a good. I did not think about that. You have a trunk, actually. Huh?
Practicality, right?
You have area back there.
I guess technically the GT3 has fake back seats, so in theory you could put stuff in there.
Oh, good point. Yes. In theory, yes.
I don't know. Either way, I don't think you can, like, choose poorly if you choose either one. I don't know.
All right. Well, we know what you're choosing. Okay,
so,
we've got you down. Porsche, if they're listening, they want to sponsor you.
I'm firmly pegged as a Porsche person, I think.
And when did this begin? Like, you got a BMW. Did you always want a Porsche?
No. So I used to think Porsches were kind of funny looking, and I still kind of think they're funny looking. But I had my BMW, and, you know, I'd been driving it for like 5 years, and I was really just kind of plateauing. No matter what I tried, it just kept being the same, and I was like, what do I want to do for a car? And then this local person let me drive their 997 Carrera 2S, and I was like, I need one of those, but one that I can afford. So I ended up with the Cayman.
Okay, so we basically try it, and you're like, this is different, this is better, this is fun.
It's so much better. Yeah, I would never buy another BMW now. It's really terrible. You shouldn't drive a Porsche unless you're ready to buy one.
Yeah, I mean, I got to credit Salil with actually getting me into one. I'm like, oh my goodness. I couldn't believe when I said yes. I was like, how do you not say yes to that? And
yeah,
it's like, man, that was a lot of fun. I mean,
and you were at the Porsche dealership. It's a terrible cycle.
It's a terrible cycle. It's like back in the day, I thought I was going to get a BMW for D stock instead of a Type R. And I saw the price, and I didn't know even how to price it out, honestly. I don't think of which options. But I was smart to go, how much does an M3 cost? And it wasn't much more. And luckily, I don't have one, never have, because they said it took 1.5 years to get it. So sometimes the fate works out well that it saves me from buying things that I didn't need and may not have been competitive. But just like, why would I buy a 330 if I can get an M3 for X amount more? It didn't make sense to me. It's like, why would I? Yeah. Some people bought Type Rs and some people bought a GSR, and there was maybe 3 or 4 or 5 grand difference. It's like, yeah. And now I'm just trying to justify.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you can get a GT versus a whatever. Those prices still just are astronomical in my mind. But I'm like, people still do it, and it still works out, and they have a lot of fun. And they even share.
Yeah.
They share the addictions.
They do.
And they send you links afterwards. When they see them for sale, they send them to you. I'm like, don't do that.
They're enablers, definitely.
Yeah, that's a great track car. I'm like, I'm not tracking that car. That's crazy. That's a lot of money. Well, Rachel, I thank you for the very entertaining and enlightening. I think we've got some nuggets in there for sure. I like that.
And the Porsche Talk podcast.
Yeah, only at the end. Maybe I'll warn. No, I probably won't warn people. That's fine. I don't own a Porsche, so it's okay. It's not like I'm hook, line, and sinker in there yet.
There is something. Could I actually say something?
Oh, we're still going.
Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is that I wish that people had pushed me into the open classes earlier. Because like when I joined SCCA, it was kind of like, you know, you were funneled into a ladies class basically because you're a female, and that's like, oh, well, this is where you race. But then, you know, once I was like, well, why am I racing ladies when, you know, I could join all the competition? And I think that has pushed me to be a much better driver because, you know, I have like, oh, well, there's all these people, and I really, you know, I have that competitive edge where you're just like, well, I have to be better. And so now, like, running against, you know, it's like a bigger field with all these people. It just has pushed me and spurred me on to be better. And they're all so friendly. Like all the people in the open class, they're really great. And I'm not saying, you know, that anybody else wasn't, but it's really, really great running in the open class. So if anybody's on the fence about, you know, where to run, I wouldn't hesitate. And it really, I think it's made me so much better.
Yeah, because you have a lot more competition, right? There's more people in the open classes.
Yeah, there's more people, and, you know, it's just a really great place. So I'm very happy to have moved there and wish I'd done it sooner.
Oh, and of all odd things that makes me think of is at some point they just kind of moved me to our expert class locally, and I was thinking, it was Winter Series. So we raced in the winter. I was like, why did they do that? Of course, there was no competition in D stock by the time I got the Type R and was quick. And that also, I think, was, at least for us here locally, that was a huge deal. All of a sudden, I was around the top 10 people consistently. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden...
It's like
yeah, go ahead.
You drive at the level that you're, like, surrounded by. So, like, you got pushed into this expert class, and even if you didn't think you were ready, like, all of these people are driving at this level. So you're like, oh, I'm going to drive at that level.
Yep.
So
same type thing that if that's an option for you. And also, I hear people more and more locally that are doing national stuff say, I got to go to X class next year because only 3 runs count. And that's the case. If you care about nationals or any tour, 3 runs count. And when you're taking 6 runs and the last 2 or 3 are faster, it doesn't matter. It really, you can practice or you can change some things and play around, but in X class, it doesn't matter. Our 3 runs are judged against everybody else's 6. And that's just how it is. So it helps you on the mental side, too, of not being lazy, I guess, of going, oh, look, I took off a second. Well, that's too bad. You didn't do it in the first 2 runs.
Yeah, you wouldn't get that run normally. So.
Yeah, it would not happen. So that's yet, it's funny, I'm not getting more competition, but the people, and also just being around them, you'll see what they're doing, and maybe some of that stuff will rub off. You'll be like paying attention to what they do or don't do. For me, not being super structured, it's like, oh yeah, pay attention to all these little things. Yeah, check your tire. I mean, simple things like check your tire pressures every run. Locally, I need to make myself do that. I didn't. I was probably having too much fun watching videos. I'm like, oh, look, there's my run. It's on my phone. This is magic. Bluetooth is amazing. So I would even suggest that, like, go find the competition. That's one thing Kevin Dietz pointed out, is he'd love to find the competition. And other people, I think, to throw in there, you might find somebody that's faster than you and get them in your car. Or at least as fast as you that are fast. If you're both 30th to 50th overall or something locally, or points-wise, I'm thinking 960 or 950 points, you might want to throw somebody that's a decent gap bigger, or at least get them in there at times. Especially if you
even if you're the same, you might be doing things differently. So that could be helpful.
And that's where some people like you may be very good at looking at data or the video. If I see data on that stuff, I mean, it was Summer Series or Winter Series here. I was driving the STRS S2000, and I think he was over a second slower than me. But he showed me one spot where he was 4/10 quicker. And when I looked at it, I was like, there's no way your line is tighter than mine. I was lazy there. I was offline and didn't realize it. 4/10. And overall, he was slower. So that's where, like you're saying, that can even happen if somebody's even anywhere close to your level. Because at some point during 3 or 4 or 5 runs, they might do something better than you and point it out very quickly. Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, the whole competition, as long as you want to get better, throw yourself into it. And then I'm really always struggling trying to figure out how to help people more figure out how to be faster. it's like a continual thing I'm always thinking about. So I recorded a video, hopefully I'll get out pretty soon, of what I do when I'm driving on the street. And that's why I'm so glad I have a car that's the car I can drive on the street and race. I pay attention to what I can hit on the road and feel if I'm hitting it or not hitting it, from rumble strips to whatever. It's how many different things can people figure out that they need to start learning, not only with people in the car, but on the street or anywhere else to get better. And it may be a sickness. It may be something that I'm extra nutty and other people are nutty, that we're thinking about this stuff more often than other people would ever have a clue. So, actually, I don't know if you do any of that. Do you drive on the street, and are you thinking about moving your eyes around or placing the car?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a ton of terrible potholes and roads, so I'm always, trying to avoid things, trying to look ahead there.
Yeah.
And then with the motorcycle, I always have to, be scanning everywhere all the time, so.
Yeah. And I think that's all practice, and we can do that every day if we drive much, whereas some of us can't autocross every single weekend 2 times every time.
Yes, I'm very lucky. I'm a very lucky person.
Cool. Yeah, you're like, I can never move. I have to stay here. I'm in the right spot. You're in the new Mecca. I didn't realize that. Cool. Well, Rachel, I appreciate it. Once again, it was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.